welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. I'm your host, Michaels, and on our episode today, we're going to cover off the Geelong game, going to touch on a couple of topics with some players coming back from injury, and of course, review our upcoming game against Fremantle. For our guest today, we have a returning guest, so Grockadoc, welcome back to you.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be back.
Yeah, good to see the internet is now up and running.
Yeah, finally, after 5 weeks and several complaints to the telecommunications ombudsman, but managed a $9.30 phone bill across 3 different packages, being internet, home phone, and mobile. So at least they sorted that out for me.
Living the dream. That's the way to do it. And our other guest is, look, we'll say international because the IP address is international. I call him the voice of reason on the BigFooty board. So, KiwiTiger, welcome to you.
Kia ora, gents, from Barnaby Joyce country. It's good to be here, and thank you very much for the compliment, Michaels, on voice of reason. I don't know about that. But,
no, very much so. I think John Wig actually said the same thing. So.
Elton John's wig. He's a good man. He's I don't know whether to call him Elton or Wig. But
I know. Speaking of him, though, well, quickly, what are you drinking there? Just so he can give you a bit of a rundown on if it's good or not.
Well, people who know me around the footy club and around other places know that I enjoy a Central Otago Pinot Noir. So I am sitting here on a Monday. I normally don't drink Monday to Fridays, but given that I'm speaking to the Richmond family here, I thought I'd treat myself to a glass of Central Otago Pinot Noir. So I'm looking forward to Elton John's Wig's critique of that choice.
It's a special occasion indeed.
Being the board's vigneron and all of that, or sommelier, it's quite a lofty title for him.
It is.
I'm looking forward to the critique.
And we'll also follow up with, how did you become a Richmond supporter?
Me. That's a good story. Well, I think it is, but everyone else will think it's probably crap. But my first memory of life, and probably showing my age, but in 1969, my grandfather took me he barracked for St Kilda. He took me to a Richmond Collingwood game, and that is the first thing I remember of life is Richmond Collingwood at the MCG. And the one thing I do remember is at half-time way back then, everyone would light up a cigarette. And I've actually got this, and it would create like a fog over the centre of the MCG. And I've actually got this memory of this fog at the MCG, which is probably a good metaphor for the supporting of Richmond from then on in. But I won't go into that. But I also did grow up in a part of Melbourne out right near Warrigal Road in a suburb called Ashburton. And on one side of Warrigal Road was the Hawthorn zone, and on the other side of Warrigal Road was the Richmond zone. And thankfully I went to a primary school that was full of kids that played for a club called Essex Heights, which was across the other side of Warrigal Road and was sometimes known as Richmond's under-17s. It was a very strong Richmond supporting area, so that's probably my 2 main influences, was my grandfather and the kids I went to school with. So, I was in a Hawthorn and St Kilda family. I was a Richmond supporter.
Yeah, it sounds like very much to me, born in a multi-team family, and then through your grandfather was where you got the real Tiger influence.
Well, it was. He was a rep for Dunlop Sports, and he went to a lot of football, and he thankfully took me to a lot of Richmond games. But it's funny you talk about a multi-fan household. I like stirring my brother about the fact that he actually started off barracking for Melbourne, then changed to Hawthorn. And so he had split personality. The other thing I do remember, I did do was I played Little League for Hawthorn because of where I lived. Yeah. And one day we played against Richmond at Princes Park, and I was so fundamentally and ethically challenged playing against Richmond that I actually grabbed the ball and kicked the wrong way. And my mum and dad recorded that on Super 8 movie, which has now been converted to CD-ROM, and they still have pleasure at playing it at major birthday milestones of the day I kicked the wrong way because I just couldn't give a stuff about Hawthorn.
And keep an eye out for the thread where Kiwi's going to actually upload that video for everyone.
Mum and Dad have got it. They have got it. And I take great pleasure in it. I was, I suppose it built the foundations of me as a chartered accountant now that I could never be ethically and morally challenged, and it started early.
And for those of you who are very familiar with your posting, would know that you've been involved quite heavily with the club. So what involvement have you had with the club over the years? I've always been a member, and then I sort of became a coterie member with Neville Crow's group that was called the Captain's Club then in 2001. And Nev, who's a great man and really re-engaged a hell of a lot of people at the club, got me to sit on the inaugural Tommy Hafey Club committee. For those who know the Tommy Hafey Club, which is like a fundraiser for past players and for the club. And that was in 2002. And then I went from there onto the audit. I was an invited member of the Audit and Risk Committee of the club, so a board subcommittee, which I did from 2006 to 2010. And I suppose in that whole era of Tommy Hafey Club, and I'm still a coterie member. I'm a Richmond executive coterie member. So, I suppose through all of that I've got to know a few people that I like to call the Richmond family, and it is like a family, which does sort of impact my posting to a degree. You get to know people that work at the club and people around the club. So, it's good.
Just my small potted history, but it's no different to many others. And, it's all part of the Richmond family. That's the way I always look at it, as part of the family. And that's why I travel the way I do as well, because no offence to New Zealand and having a weekend in Auckland or anywhere else, but it is quite good to reconnect with the family on a regular basis. So that's why I often travel the way I do.
Fair enough. And you must have some good stories from your travels and interactions with the club. I went to Arizona in 2011, and that was just an amazing experience, just to see, how they train, how they travel, how the playing group, how disciplined they are. It was amazing because we went to all the meetings, and if you got to a meeting room at 1 minute to the meeting time, you were late. It was just, everyone was just so disciplined and focused, and they still are now. When you go to Punt Road and you walk through the training area and you see all the clocks on the walls, and there's actually like LED screens of what the routine is for a day, and it's timed down to the minute, and all the players are just so disciplined yet incredibly welcoming. And I always remember we were getting a flight. I met the playing group in Los Angeles, so I flew from Auckland, and they flew from Melbourne, and we then flew on to Tucson when the camp started, and we were boarding the Southwest Airlines flight. I think it was Southwest Airlines in Los Angeles, and the hostess came on board with a heavy American accent, and she said, if Mr. Daniel Connors is on the plane, can you please press your call button, Mr. Daniel Connors? And Daniel had been suspended for drinking off-season and wasn't on the trip, so everyone sort of laughed when he was paid. But that was one thing I always remember. The other thing was, I think that was a year that Brandon was drafted, and I think Todd Elton, and those guys were drafted, I think, on a Friday night, and they were on a plane to US. I think even Dean McDonald might have been on that trip, and I don't think he even had a passport. And and it was incredible just to see the look in the eyes of Brandon and Todd that they'd just been drafted, and there they were at the University of Arizona, in a foreign country, getting to know their playing group. That was interesting to watch. I mean, in a good way. I mean, it was quite a challenge for them.
And it was interesting just to observe all that.
Oh, very good. I appreciate you sharing that story with us.
No, that's all right. Sorry, I waffled on there.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the Autopsy Play of the Year vote award. So this is as of after the Geelong game. So the 5 votes went to Prestia. Vlosten got 4 votes, Lambert with 3, Grimes with 2, and Dusty with 1. So the updated leaderboard now looks like: in 5th place, Dion Prestia on 18 votes. In 4th place, Kane Lambert on 20 votes. In 3rd place, Alex Rance on 38 votes. 2nd place, Trent Cotchin on 40 votes. And in 1st place, still Dusty on 67 votes. The one player I want to pick out of here to talk about just quickly is Kane Lambert in 4th place on 20 votes. Now, if I'd have asked anyone on the board at the start of the year, would they have Kane Lambert in our top 4 Autopsy Thread votes, I'd be pretty confident in saying that I would have been told to go jump. He's had an outstanding year.
Yeah, he has. I think when you look at it, I think the biggest thing for Lambo is that he's worked on his sort of contested game and his tagging as well. He's added more strings to his bow and is contributing more than just getting the ball like he was last season. But I think he's surprised many, because many had him in the dud D list, category as of last year. So I'm glad that he's turned it around, because he's one of the most professional players that I've certainly talked to, with his dedication and application to the training regime and everything. So he reminds me a bit of Jake King in that way. He's not the most talented bloke, but he more than makes up for it with his attitude and work ethic.
Oh, I totally concur. And I just think, a guy who was picked, I think he was in the 40s, I think, of the rookie draft.
Yeah.
And that was 2015. So he's come a long way. I know he's 25. He's probably reaching his sweet spot, but he's clean. His decision making and his hands were pretty clean. He did go missing a bit, I thought, in the 3rd quarter there or the last quarter on Saturday. But yeah, look, totally agree. I mean, who would have picked him being 4th on the list? And I think he's just been his decision making, his use of the ball, the fact that he does get it, and what he's achieved from his pick, I think is extraordinary. Yeah,
it's a credit to how hard he's worked. So hopefully he keeps up that form, and on the assumption we're going to play finals, it's going to be interesting to see how he sort of steps up under that next level of pressure. But I think he's really nailed down his role within the team. So I expect him to keep carrying on as usual.
And he's done it all under sufferance, because he's lost his best mate.
I'm glad that was brought up. I'm so glad.
But apparently he's got a new best mate at the club. When I was at the player sponsors dinner as a delegate of BigFooty for the player sponsorship, Lambo and Shedder were inseparable. They were going to the toilet together. Like, we were joking that they were joined at the hip. They were like teenage girls, couldn't go anywhere without the other.
Oh, God. I mean, if he's hanging around with Shedder, then the next thing, bloody Lambo's going to be wearing a beanie on his head when it's 26 degrees, which Shedder seems to do. So I look forward to that.
Just with the player ratings, the one player that I'm actually surprised isn't top 5 based on his current season would be Dave Asprey. I reckon he's probably been... Looking at it, I reckon he's probably been better than what Alex Rance has over the course of the season in terms of consistency. I mean, Rance has had better games than what Dave has, but Dave's been doing it consistently week in, week out, whereas Alex has sort of been up and down over the course of the last 7-8 weeks. So for him not to be in the top 5 of the board MVP, I'd actually hazard a guess and say he'd be top 3 in our best and fairest right now. So
yeah, I agree.
His omission in the leaderboard is pretty surprising to me, actually.
I think that might come down to posters not wanting to let go of their dud the list kind of theory on him from a couple of years ago. But
send him to Brisbane.
yeah, for a second round pick, which we were very close to doing. But I agree, he'll be in our top 3 or 4 quite easily in the best and fairest. He's been outstanding.
Well, I think there's two things that weigh in his saddlebag, and the one, the dud to list element is one, and I think the other one is that he just simply stands next to an All-Australian, two or three times All-Australian full-back. So, people probably weigh him down on the basis of he's standing next to Alex.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely agree. Having a rippy, we'll push on to the roast and toast. This could be a slightly extended version because there is definitely a few hot topics at hand. So, Grock, you've got the roast this week, or the first one anyway. So, what have you got for us?
I've actually got two separate roasts. I was planning to only do one, but the events of the game on Saturday forced me to add in this a second one. The first one that I was originally going to roast is to the AFL for allowing James Hird to present the Norm Smith medal on Grand Final day. I think that's sending a poor message to the football community. James Hird, for all that he's done at Essendon with the supplements saga, he brought so much, unwanted attention and, and he brought the game into disrepute and gained international notoriety for the AFL through, what he actually did. So he's tainted the Brownlow medal indirectly with Joe because of, the actions that he and some other rogue members of the Essendon Football Club did in 2012. And for him to present the Norm Smith medal, I think is sending the wrong message that if you do actually, bring the game into disrepute, then the AFL are keen to look over that if you were a champion player, which I think is totally wrong. And the second one is the altercation with the Richmond and Geelong cheer squads at the game on Saturday, where long-time Tiger tragic Trout Woodend was spat in the face from a Geelong supporter. Now, I actually was meaning to go to this game, but ended up having a migraine. So I allowed my Geelong supporting brother to tag along with my Geelong supporting uncle. And they were sitting 2 bays over from where the incident occurred. And from what they were saying, the Cats fan actively seeked out Trout and got into an argument with him and then deliberately spat in Trout's face, which actually started a actual physical confrontation that required security to step in. I just think some people take things way too personally, especially at the football. It's just a game, there's nothing to really, get upset about. We all take losses to heart, but spitting in someone's face is a completely disgusting act, and it has potential, serious health implications down the road through, transmittable diseases. You don't know what the other person has, and I just think that was a disgraceful act. So my roast is to that Geelong supporter as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And like you said, footy is just a game at the end of the day, and everyone should just go to the ground to support their own team, and that's it. There's no need to be doing anything like that with opposition supporters.
Yeah, well, banter's always going to be a part of football. It's always going to be. We all like to get one up on the opposition, cheer squads if we can. But you can't take things to heart, because if you do, you're never going to make it out alive.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll probably talk about this in my roast and toast, but yeah, I've got this theory that when you go to Subiaco and you go to Adelaide Oval and probably Skilled as well, where the vast majority of the crowd barracks for one side, it seems like the banter element just goes out the door. And and you find, we've had issues at Subiaco and at Adelaide as well. And yeah, it's just like people lose that. I think we're quite lucky that we play at the MCG and it's more of a democratic and balanced crowd, whereas at some of these other venues where it's dominated by one side, it does lead to trouble. And I just
almost like they feel they become invincible just through sheer weight of numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
they succumb to the pack mentality of, oh well, you're in the minority here, we'll take advantage of this. And I just think, you have a right to, go to the football and showcase your emotions, but do it in a constructive way, and don't resort to violence. It's just not needed.
No, definitely not. And Kiwi, what have you got for your roast first up?
Well, it's funny. I'm I might continue on the Dan Connors theme just for a second. No offence, Dan, but I might give him a little subtle roast for tweeting during the week, that just picking up on Croc's Norm Smith theme with James Hurd, who does remind me of the song by Carly Simon, You're So Vain. But Connors tweeted that James presenting the Norm Smith would be like him presenting the Jack Dyer medal. But Dan, I think you forgot that James actually won a Norm Smith medal, and I don't think he came even close for a Jack Dyer medal. So I think that whole analogy is just totally wrong.
Yeah.
My other roast was actually going to be, this is a bit lateral, it's for the Western Australian Football Commission, because a lot of people in the eastern states probably haven't picked up with the fact that this is going to be our last game at Subiaco, and it's Freo's last game as well, which does worry me. But I believe that the Western Australian Football Commission are having a month of celebrations, celebrating great events that have happened at Subiaco over the past, and you can probably guess they all involve either West Coast or Freo or the WA side winning State of Origin. But they fail to neglect the fact that actually Fitzroy played their last game ever in the AFL at Subiaco, and Norm Mugovan has asked me to actually give my roast to them for forgetting that fact, that historic fact. And I'm actually going to turn around my toast. Sorry, guys, to just jump to the toast straight away.
No, that's right.
My toasts, I'm actually going to celebrate 5 great events, Richmond events that happened at Subiaco. I think that'll be my toast. And very quickly, in order, I've been to Subiaco 10 times and I've seen all of these bar one, but the first one was actually Jack Riewoldz's coming of age. I think it was in a game in 2008 against West Coast where he kicked his first bag of 5 and we absolutely killed them by 70 points. That was always a meritorious win that I remember. And a little kid, as I left the ground talking about pack mentality, told me that Richmond cheated, and I couldn't work out how that happened if we won by 7 points. The Freo game of 2015, when we just had an absolute ripping first quarter, Freo were undefeated. I think it was round 10.
Yeah.
And watching the replay afterwards, I think Basil Zempilas, or as a mate of mine likes to call him, Basil Syphilis. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Baz. But I think Basil said that Freo was still coming when they were 30 points down with about 5 minutes to play. So I don't know.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that
what
comment.
Basil was thinking about that day, but it certainly wasn't Freo. Of course, the Cuz returned to Subi game. I think it was 2009. Where Mitch Morton kicked around his body to kick the winning goal. And I think Cuz flipped the bird at the camera in the change rooms, which would have been, I think it was pre-game. And I remember flying home with the team and we got back to Tullamarine at 4 a.m. and there was a whole lot of media at Tullamarine at 4 a.m. and you knew something was happening. And the great Jude Donnelly, our media person then, she knew that there was something up. So thanks, Cuz, for that. The other one that I loved was in the 1980s when we had nothing to hold on to, State of Origin at Subiaco and Flea Waitman. Flea was just, at State of Origin level, was just phenomenal. And I think it was a game in 86 at Subiaco that was, Flea was best on ground. And I think it's often described as one of the best games of footy ever played. I think WA won by about 3 points, but Flea was just phenomenal that day. And the final one, of course, which you can probably all guess, on the wet, cold, freezing night when Ty clocked Dean Cox.
No.
You could see just before they contest that Ty's eyes were rolling over like a poker machine in his head, and because he got a bit of niggle from Dean Cox, and yeah, I'm sure in terms of Ty's career at Tigerland, it's one thing we all remember.
Yeah, well, I think
my
that
toast.
I think that was the most impact Ty's ever had on the football field was to Dean Cox's face. But I'm just surprised I'm actually surprised he managed to miss Dean Cox's nose. Like,
yeah, he did.
The fact,
good point.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, he's got a big proboscis, old Dean, and schnoz, and Ty managed to miss it and flush the jaw. I could have done some roast on some of the infamous moments of Subiaco, which I remember Luke Chicken Legs McGawan running into the open goal and missing. And Jared Sylvester's performance at fullback, I think in 2009 when we lost by 130 points. But I won't move on.
I'm sure there's plenty of poor ones to go around, no doubt.
Then you've got the controversial ones like Matt White's snap from the boundary that ended up hitting the goal umpire.
And Croc, who got in the way of that kick again?
That was Tyrone Vickery. He ended up tried to get a boot to it to put it through and completely ballsed it up.
That's no surprise to anyone. And I'm going to quickly roast the Richmond posters who are opting to blame the umpires on our loss against Geelong. I have no issue in people arguing that the umpiring was bad or picking out decisions that weren't right and all that kind of stuff, but the fact still remains that we did a lot more things in that game that cost us the game than what the umpires did. They're only a very, very small part of it. So I just think that, you just got to give credit to Geelong for stepping up and playing the better overall game, and we had our chances and failed to put them away. But, yes, the umpiring was poor, but we can't put that down to the reason as we lost the game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the umpires, they were the most influential in the second quarter, and we were down by 6 points at three-quarter time. From that point on, the umpires had nothing to do with it. It was, the Cats' pressure, their zone, and our inability to hit a target coming out of the back line. So, it wasn't the umpires that lost it. It was the fact that, Geelong's pressure game and our, lack of composure that did us in.
Exactly right. And speaking of the Geelong game, we'll get straight into the review of that. So Geelong 11-14-80 defeated Richmond 9-12-66, so they got up by 14 points, and that's now dropped us back down to fourth position on the ladder. Kiwi, what did you make of the game?
Look, I thought we got off to a good start. I think Prestia was involved early in a number of touches, which, looked really good. Good start, but then I think the caddy injury was a significant loss. I think it was a significant loss from a structure viewpoint. Caddy plays a role that people call the Trump role. It's like a smash and crash, taller forward, but he can also play a bit of midfield when required. But he just provides a bit of crash and bash forward. He provides pressure. And when we lost him, I think it was Ivy Soldo went back, and Ivy just failed to impact a contest. He really lacked that crash and bash, and then guys like Henderson and just took over and zoned off and repelled, and I think structurally Caddy was a big loss.
Yeah, it definitely was, and even just being that rotation down hurt, but you're spot on structurally.
Oh, that's right.
It hurt us big time. So, and Grock, what about yourself? What did you make of the game?
I actually had a feeling on the Friday night that this was going to be a danger game, even with Geelong's outs. You have a look at the players that they brought in, Reece Stanley, Daniel Menzel, Stephen Motlop. All of these guys have had ripping games against Richmond more often than they haven't, and all of them were handy footballers. So I don't think that Geelong were as undermanned as what the media and their fans will have us believe, because they would still be at about 90%. Obviously they were missing a couple of others like Cockatoo and that, but I just think that first 15 minutes of the first quarter really hurt us. We got off to a fantastic start and had all the play, but we just couldn't put it on the scoreboard. I think in the first 15 minutes we had, I think it was 86% of time in forward half, and we'd only kicked 2 goals to that point. So, we controlled the play, and we just couldn't convert, which has been a major issue for us this season, which is why I believe we actually play a, high pressure forward line tactic, because we don't get the easy goals that most other teams do. We actually struggle to score. We have to work so much harder. So if we lock the ball in, we get more chances to get the goal. But I agree with Kiwi when he said Caddy going down hurt us. That was noticeable as soon as he went off. Our forward structure just turned to complete crap. We were going. While he was on, we were going, quick and, moving the ball with real confidence. And then when he went off, we started, over handballing to try and get it into the forward line. And it just didn't work from that point on. So I think the Caddy injury and our inability to capitalise when we had the momentum in the first and third quarters, I think really let us down. And then, of course, the Cats rolled over the top of us in the last quarter.
Yeah. We did start to... Sorry, Croc, I was going to say that you're spot on. We started to overuse the ball a bit, didn't we? And I'm not sure whether that's because the structure of our forward line was out, but when we were sort of transitioning out of the defensive half, we just started to overuse the handball and just one too many again, and we were trying to run it in, but yeah, it was just one too many handballs.
It was.
Yeah, you could see when they were transitioning from half back, they'd look downfield and try for the look to go for the kick, and then all of a sudden realise that okay, there's no Caddy's not there, Jack's being triple teamed. We're going to have to get this forward, so they go for the hand pass, and by the time they've gone from deciding to, all right, I'm going to kick this to hand pass, they're either getting tackled or the handball's getting smothered. There was just, that doubt in their minds of, okay, well, what are we going to do here? We can't play how we want to play. I think that was a real, psychological disadvantage having Caddy go down.
Yeah, because the one thing we stopped doing is we didn't keep on doing those little 45-degree kicks through the middle of the ground. That's been kind of what's helped us really open teams up on transition. And like you both said, we just started to get handball happy just in hope that we'd break through. And the amount of times we handballed to someone in a far worse position that got crunched, and of course a turnover occurred and Geelong would score from it, we were just gifting him goals. And the other one that probably hurt us, I think, a lot was Basher missing those two easy set shots after getting the 50-metre penalties. When you get when you get the Cats on the ropes like that, especially down there, you have to convert those easy shots on goal, because that's a big momentum shift.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, scoreboard hurt.
It did, and obviously the matchup of Harry Taylor, he well and truly beat Rance. There's no other way to put it. But I would have liked to have seen Asprey shifted back onto him almost after quarter time and let Rance go back up the field and play his natural game. He was not out of his depth down there one-on-one isolated, but the Geelong coaching staff just absolutely nailed that matchup, and we didn't really do anything about it to try and fix it.
Yeah, that actually surprised me, starting Rants on Harry Taylor, because Blake Carosella actually did an interview for the actual Richmond website with their opposition analysis, saying that the key matchup that they were focusing on was David Asprey on Harry Taylor. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they've spent the week, planning to play Asprey on, Harry Taylor. They've planned for it. And then they only made the move, 3.5 quarters in, when Harry Taylor absolutely given Rance a bath. Why would they plan for one thing and then completely go against it? It just boggles me why that change wasn't made earlier, or why Asprey didn't actually start on Harry Taylor like they'd originally planned to.
Yeah, I think it could have been a totally different outcome if we had have made that switch a bit earlier.
Yep.
Yep, fair question.
I think that's
Sorry,
Kiwi, you go.
No, I was just thinking. I noticed Alex appeared in the forward line late in the last quarter.
Yeah,
but,
with a minute and a half to go, he popped up down forward.
Yeah, that's right. Too little, too late.
I think one of the biggest knocks on Rance is when he gets into a wrestle, he generally does tend to be outstrength. It's happened several times over the past few years, particularly against Tom Hawkins. Harry Taylor got a hold of him on the weekend. Tom Lynch got a hold of him last year. Jesse Hogan got a hold of him last year. Travis Cloak's gotten a hold of him. Drew Petrie's gotten a hold of him. And the one thing that they all have in common is they're all really strong and like to wrestle. Rance's game is that he's mobile and can come over the top. As soon as he got into a wrestle with Harry Taylor, it was never going to end well for Rance. As good as he is, wrestling isn't his go-to. It just completely negates any of his, defensive capabilities.
Absolutely. Well, we'll push on to the main topic to discuss. We've obviously got quite a few players coming back from injury in the lead up to a potential final series. I'll just go through some of the names and just give us your thoughts on should we look at trying to get them back into the team, and if so, who would come out for them. So, Kiwi, I'll start with you. So, Sean Hampson coming back from a back injury. He's in competition with Soldo. Who offers more? And what do you think we should be going with?
Is there a third option? I suppose everyone's probably thinking caddy out, who comes in. And also, look, Ivy Soldo just didn't get to a contest on the weekend, I thought, when he went forward. I think Nank does need a chop out. He's starting to tire. He was lumbering a bit. But Sean coming in, I'm just not sure whether I think he's probably a better choice than Ivy Soldo. But it depends on the structure of the side and how we want to play that. I think Nank does need a chop out. So we do need to play another tall. I'm just, if I had to choose between Sean and Ivy Soldo, I'd probably take a risk not knowing about fitness or what have you, but possibly with Sean if I had to.
All right, and Reece Conker, so he's returning from a foot injury shortly. I've sort of got him pegged down as maybe in competition with Corey Ellis. Do we try and find a spot for Reece back in the team?
I think that's a tough one. Reece was in ripping form earlier this year before he injured himself. He's really found a niche on the halfback flank as it accentuated his natural football talents. His athleticism, his pace, his composure with the ball. I think Corey Ellis right now is more suited to a half forward role. I just think he's not accountable enough to play as a halfback flanker and doesn't really get involved enough while he's down there. Halfback flanker's role is to provide a target and be the distributing link between the back line and the midfield. And for someone playing that role, he doesn't get enough of the football. So based on that, I would bring Conker in for Corey Ellis. But just on the Hampson one, I would bring in Hampson over Soldo. What actually surprised me about the game on the weekend was they played Nank more in the ruck than they did Soldo, which, given the previous 2 weeks against Gold Coast and Hawthorn, where they played Soldo more ruck and rested Nank out of the goal square, I'm surprised we didn't go down that way again, especially once Caddy had gone down, because Nank's a decent contested mark and actually provides a target. So I think, as Kiwi said, Nank needs a chop out. So I would play Nank out of the goal square for the next couple of games and bring Hampson in to be the number one ruckman, because his tap work's fantastic and he gets around the ground and his marking's improved since he's gotten to the club. So I think Hampson is still best 22 at this stage, at least in my opinion.
And the last one for you, Kiwi, is Big Benny Griffiths coming back from a shoulder injury. We all dearly want him to make it because we do all think he can make a difference to us structurally. How do you see his return is going to pan out? Do we try and put him back into the seniors at some stage before finals, or what do you think we do there?
I'd put him away. I'd say take a few months off, get yourself right, get your I know he's concussion issues. He went away for a few weeks up north and thought about it. But yeah, just take time, and I'm willing to give him time. I'd give him time too, and I wouldn't rush him back.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I'd put him on ice and just say that's enough this season. Just get yourself right. Get some confidence back in flying for those marks and putting your body on the line. Just get those things right, and then reboot for 2018, because right now he's probably the most important player on our list from a structure standpoint. And if he's not in the right mindset, with his confidence, or if he's not physically ready for it, then we're going to struggle next year. Again, we're going to have the same issues that we had this year.
Yeah, he's definitely important to us, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of approach the club takes with it, because we just don't want to have a repeat of that final against the Kangaroos where he comes in raw and had little to no impact. So, I'll whip through the VFL update just quickly. So, Geelong 12-12-84 defeated Richmond 11-11-77 by 7 points, which has now put us down to 6th on the VFL ladder. The Richmond listed goal kickers were Lennon with 3, Bolton with 2, Lloyd with 2, Moore and Stengel with 1 each. And the Richmond listed best players were Townsend, Graham, Short, Hunt, Lennon and Big Ivan. So good to see a pretty strong list there of the best listed players. There's still been, the same few guys that are still putting their hands up to come in, and I will probably touch on that when we go through the preview. But the one I'm kind of looking at potentially coming in for Caddy to be that second forward is Ben Lennon. Another 3 goals. He's now kicked 11 goals in his past 4 games. Is he close, Kiwi?
Look, knowing what I do about the Trump role, as they call it, I think he can contest. I'm not sure if he's crash and bash, and I'm not sure if he's defensive. I'm not sure if there is a straight swap for Caddy in Lennon.
Yeah.
That's my greatest concern.
Yeah, just on that, I think if we're going to go like for like, Townsend's probably the best option to replace Caddy. He's decent up forward. He contests well. He's got the defensive aspects down, and he can go through the middle. Whereas Lennon can't go through the middle. He doesn't have the endurance or the speed to be a midfielder. Whereas Townsend actually is a dual type. He can play as a flanker, can play as a medium marking forward, and he can play as an inside or an outside distributing midfielder. So if we're going to go like for Caddy, it's Townsend for me is the one, not Lennon.
Yeah. I think Lennon's got a couple of X's in terms of that like for like. Yeah, I totally agree.
And we'll push on to the preview for this week's game against Fremantle. I know we say it each week, but it's a massive game for our season. We've all but locked in a finals appearance. We can still mathematically drop out, but when you look at the draw of the teams below us playing, who they're playing, it seems more likely than not that we'll make it. And it kind of just feels like now it's a matter of where we're going to finish. And this week's a massive chance to potentially secure a top 4 spot if we win. And the teams that we need to lose have both got tough games. So Sydney have got Adelaide in Adelaide, and Port Adelaide have got the Bulldogs in Ballarat. So the stage is kind of set for us to potentially secure a spot in the top 4 and not give us a free hit in round 23, but we don't have that added pressure of missing out on a double chance. The interesting point, though, is Fremantle obviously got smashed by Sydney last week by 104 points, so they're going to want to put in a better performance, especially being the last game at Subiaco, like you mentioned at the start, Kiwi. So we can't estimate how hard Free are going to come out at us. So, Kiwi, what are your thoughts on the game coming up?
Couple of things. Firstly, I'd like to... Well, Dylan Grimes is playing his 100th, so... well done to Optimus, and I spoke to his player sponsor today. I know a big family group are going over to watch him play, including his partner Alicia. So go Dylan. Just opened a winery at Mount Macedon, so I recommend it for everyone. I'm worried about this. It is the last game for Freo at Subiaco, and knowing where the new Perth Stadium is, it's miles away from Fremantle, so some of their supporters might get lost on the way to the new one. So they might go on Sunday to cheer them on, and so there might be a sentimental factor that might spur them on, but yeah, look, their form, I thought I'd watch the Sydney game to do some prep for this one, but at the end of the day, it was only Freo and they lost by 104 points, so their form coming in is not great. Just also, as an aside, I can't believe the Swans had their highest home crowd this year, v Freo, on a Saturday afternoon of 39,000 at the SCG. I don't know what was going on there.
That's actually strange, yeah.
That is just bizarre. But anyway, maybe there was some marketing thing in Sydney I wasn't aware of. But, yeah, look, Freo, the only thing going for them this week is the Subi last hurrah factor. But they're low on confidence. Ross is deciding what his future might look like. But you never know with him. They just might come out and have a blinder because they've had the wood against us over the last few odd years, bar that Basil syphilis game. So, yeah, look, hard to say. There will be a sentimental factor being their last game at Subiaco, and Subiaco is close to Fremantle. So that's the only positive I could see for them. At the end of the day, we should win this and win it well.
And Grok, what about yourself, mate?
Yeah, this is a game that I'm a little bit worried about, as Kiwi mentioned. It's one of those games where the only Freo are going to be playing for pride. You know, they want to see it out. They want to see off Domain Stadium. With a win. Yeah, they want to see it off with a win. They especially coming off a thrashing from Sydney last week. They don't want to get belted 1 week and then lose their last game at their spiritual home the next week in their final game. So I think they're going to come out absolutely breathing fire. That being said, they do have some injuries that should help us given their game plan. I mean, Michael Walters is a huge out for them, especially with the way he played against us earlier in the season. But it's one of those games where I'm worried about it, but I'm also confident in a way. We play Subiaco really well for some reason. I'd probably say that it's the ground that we play the best out of any ground in Australia, including the MCG, for some reason. And I just think it's going to suit our game plan a lot better than what Simmons did. It's a lot wider and it's a lot longer than what Simmons is as well. So if we can get some decent chances to lock the ball in our forward line, Freo's defence has shown it's pretty shaky under pressure this season. So if we can bring the pressure game that we brought to the Hawthorn game and the first sort of 15 minutes in the third quarter of the Geelong game, then I reckon we'll probably we'll get up and consolidate a top four spot.
The thing with Freo is, despite them being fairly badly out of form, they've still got some pretty good midfielders like Nat Fyfe, Lockie Neal, Brad Hill, David Mundy. They're pretty handy players, so I know they're a bit low on confidence, but if they get up and about, with it being the last game at Subi, they can still cause some serious damage. So the pace kind of concerns me a little bit. And just more the fact that we tend to sometimes stuff up the big stage games for ourselves. When we have a chance to do something really good for the club, we tend to always find a way to drop it. But like you said, though, Grok, we do travel quite well, so hopefully we come home with the win. We'll have a look at a few of the matchups quickly. So Nat Fyfe versus Trent Cotchin. I know they probably won't play on each other directly, but how do you see that one playing out, Grok?
I see that playing out more that it'll be Fife being in and under, whereas Koch will stay on the outside and let Prestia, get inside and be the extractor. So I think it's just going to come down to the ruck battle as to who wins that one. Obviously, Fife has got more strings to his bow than what Koch has. But I think in terms of being effective with their disposals that they actually get, Koch edges Fife. The biggest knock on Fife is he's not overly damaging with his possessions, and it's the same knock on Lockie Neal as well. They rack numbers up, but often it's to the detriment of the Dockers. So I think if Koch can get on the outside and make Fife accountable, I wouldn't be surprised to see Koch take the chocolates in that one.
And Kiwi, we've got Brad Hill. I think McIntosh might go to him just purely from a speed perspective, and Camden can obviously beat him in the air as well. But I think Brad Hill holds the keys for Fremantle because he likes to break the lines. He's got explosive speed, and he does have those good skills, especially going inside 50. How do you think that one's going to pan out?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail there. I mean, Hill's about speed, and we need someone who's got speed who can go with him. I don't know, Ellis. I don't think, like as in Corey. I wouldn't think he'd be the man. Camden, boy from Pinjarra, always plays well at Subiaco. It's his home base, and look, I'd certainly back him to do a role on Hill. But yeah, I just worry about Hill is explosive. Who could we have to go with him? Can Camden go with him? But he can also hurt him as a tall as well to rebound mark in D50 on Hill. So, yeah, look, it's a 50-50 that one, but I think it'd be a good matchup to watch and worth running with.
Yeah, when you have a look at it, Hill was best on ground against us earlier this season. He was just everywhere. I think he had 39 possessions. He was just, every attacking drive that Freo had in that game was started from Brad Hill on the halfback flank, either running or kicking the ball. On McIntosh, I think he's probably the best option in the side right now. But I'd maybe look at going a little left of centre and maybe bringing Connor Menadue in to go with him, because he's done some run with roles at VFL level and done them well, and he's got the speed and he's got the endurance to go with Brad Hill, and he's damaging with the ball in hand as well. So I think he may be another one we might look at to run with Brad Hill.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Would you look at possibly a Corey Ellis out, Menadue in?
That would be something that I would look at. I'd probably play Menadue on the halfback flank. That would be one, and I'd also look at probably bringing in Shea Bolton as well for one of Castagna or Butler as well.
Yeah.
And the last matchup is David Mundy just versus anyone who can stop him marking the ball with 10 seconds to go. So I don't really care who it is, but all I want to say is if the game's close with a minute to go, all I ask is someone stands next to him and make sure they don't let him out of his sight.
Oh, look, I think there's someone in the crowd, probably Tugger. I'd put even money on to jump the fence and just take him out.
Yeah, we can do like a GoFundMe to pay for his fine. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right. We could do a Helen D'Amico and just pay Tugger to just jump the fence and take him out, because I think Mundy's from Shepparton, so is Tugger. So I'd give him the role. Speaking
of Tugger, the biggest question I had written down for this game is, will KiwiTiger and Tugger have another big night out like they did in Adelaide?
I've had a few big nights out with Tugger. Yeah, look, we're currently firming up our itineraries, and I dare say there's a rather aptly named pub, or not aptly, confusingly named pub in Perth called the Lucky Shag, which is down by the Barrack Street Pier. Apparently it's named after a bird that sits on a pier. That's got nothing to do with anything else. But Tugger and I have been known to plonk ourselves in the Lucky Shag, and that could be happening again.
Oh, watch out, Perth.
Yeah, I know. I'm packing the Panadol.
You mentioned earlier that Dockers fans would get lost on the way to the new Perth Stadium. I don't reckon they would. 90% of Dockers fans know where the casino is. They just have to go to the casino and they'll find the stadium.
That's a very good call.
All right, just to wrap up, we'll get a prediction from each of you. So, Kiwi, I'll start with you first. What's your prediction and margin for the game?
I predict that I'll have a headache at about midnight, and I think we should win by about 40. As Dimmer says, we don't blow sides away, but we've got to win this one comfortably.
Fair enough. And what about yourself, Grok?
Yeah, I don't think the margin will be as big as that. I'd probably say it's going to be in the region of 17, 18 points. I just think it's going to be another win where we just grind it out, to the end. It'll be comfortable the whole way through, but it won't be a massive margin either way. And that a win this weekend will see us pretty much guarantee a top 4 spot anyway. So once we do that, the pressure will be off for next week's game, which is going to be a huge one as well, considering the Saints are all but eliminated from finals, and it'll be Nick Revolt's last game. So that's going to. I'm wondering how much the club will be looking forward to that at the moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon we might get up by somewhere between 25 to 30 points. So hopefully we can just obtain control of the game early and just keep them at arm's length right until the end and get through unscathed, really, is the main goal for the game.
Would you bring in Jack Graham this week?
I'm very close. I do find it hard to follow VFL from here, but I did see him play at Punt Road a few weeks ago, I think it was, and I think he's worth a try. I think he's very much worth a try. Maybe even, if not this week, maybe next week. I think it's close. See,
I wouldn't be against maybe putting Sean Grigg on the shelf for a week or two, just give him a bit of a spell, because he has been running a fair bit and looks a little tired. And I'd probably play Graham and Prestia as our inside mids and have Cochin replace Grigg as our outside distributor. I reckon that might be an option we look at this week as well, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, the thing that impresses me with Graham's numbers is his tackle count's always high. So not only is he finding the ball, but he's obviously doing the hard stuff defensively too. So yeah, I wouldn't be against seeing him come in either.
One of the biggest knocks on him in the draft, in the lead up to the draft, was his ability to cover the ground and his speed. Yeah, and looking at it, at watching him at VFL level, I think his pace is a lot better than many people give him credit for. He's a smooth mover. It reminds me of Mark Coughlin in a way. He's not super quick, but he just makes it look effortless when he runs. He's a very powerful, player. You can just tell by the way he runs that he's going to be a very big, strong midfielder.
That's a really good combination, because often the big, powerful guys are a bit sort of stocky and not overly fluid with their running. And it sounds like Grok, that good observations that he is, and he covers the ground, and that's a good sign, and gets the footy.
Yeah, he does, and he uses it well too, which was another knock on him, was his disposal efficiency. But he's one of these players who generally makes the right decisions the first time. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't falter. He just he goes back, backs himself in, and makes the right call probably 90% of the time.
Yeah, interesting selection ahead of us, but I think it would be good to get a game into him before the season's end, just to see what he's got at the top level. And a reminder to listeners for the game information. So the game's on Sunday, 20th of August at 2:40pm Perth time, which is 4:40pm Melbourne time, and we're live on Foxtel from 4:30. And the VFL boys are actually playing on Sunday as well at 12 o'clock at Punt Road against Sandringham. So if you've got nothing on before the game, make sure you get down to Punt Road and have a look at the VFL guys and cheer them on as well. So Grockadoc... Oh, you go on.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say very quickly for any WA listeners, there will be open training at Subi at 4 p.m. Sorry to preempt the club, but it will be on at 4 p.m. Over at Subiaco on Saturday afternoon.
Perfect. There you go. So if you're flying across, make sure you get down there and see the boys up close. And they usually are pretty accommodating and come around and sign some autographs after as well, typically. So it's usually a good intimate session virtually. So Grockadoc and Kiwi Tiger, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting to you both. And until next time, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.